Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1. Whether it's happening on the track, in the paddock, or beyond the grid, we'll talk about it all.
All right. Our first race of the season is complete. Round one of 23, the longest season yet in F1. And oh my Fernando.
Oh, my Fernando.
Oh my Fernando. Amazing.
I that was crazy. I'm so excited to see my first race live. I mean, live through the TV or my iPad, as I was how I was watching it. But that was so cool, and I'm glad that I picked him to become my favorite driver.
Yes. Very good pick. Very good pick. Two-time world champion. And oh my goodness, he is definitely in the right car this year. And who would have thought? Aston Martin, did they finish ninth last year in the constructors? Were they ninth? I can't remember. They were down there somewhere. But holy moly. This whole, like, since testing, right? We have been on the Fernando hype train, not just us, like everybody who's watching F1, from the commentators to the fans, all about the Fernando hype train. Is he going to do it? Can he do it? Can our Aston Martin really be that good? I think he proved everybody right. And for a second there, I didn't think he was going to.
Oh,
Really
I
didn't.
know. I know. I mean, it was interesting, and I mean, me trying to learn all of this and how it all works. I was really worried watching the practice and the qualifying, and then even at the very beginning of the race. I mean, I know we're covering all of this over the next 45 minutes or so, but it just it's amazing. But as we end, and we were talking before we started today, it's like definitely it's an oh my Fernando day. Just amazing, and he cracks me up listening to his audio throughout the race. I mean, one of my favorite things was when he was passing Science and he was like, yes, yes, bye bye.
He's got
Crack me
some
up.
great ones. I loved, lovely car to drive. This is a lovely car to drive. I just thought that was so cute. And I also appreciated that, once he passed signs and was kind of, I think he knew he wasn't going to catch up to Checo, but I love that he was checking on Stroll. Where's Stroll? What is he doing? And to have that kind of, like, capacity to be checking on your teammate while you are, now in a podium spot and maybe hoping trying to get a little bit higher. I just think that's amazing. I think that says a lot about him and what a teammate he's going to be for Lance. So I
I think
I think there
and
was
it,
nothing better than seeing him on the podium at the end.
I think so too. And I think it's fascinating too, considering he calls himself the bad boy, but he's actually a good guy.
Yeah, I think he is deep down. He
Absolutely.
definitely is. But we will talk a lot more about Fernando as we go through. But let's kind of talk about practice a little bit. What were your thoughts? This was kind of your first time really watching the practices. What did you think?
I was interesting. I mean, when I first started, I was wondering, like, is practice something that's supposed to represent how the races are going to be, or what? Because a lot of it was like didn't look good at all. It was, there was parts flying off cars, and there was all kinds of bad things happening, and questions about the tires. And then, of course, I mean, the big news I think almost the entire weekend was Lance and his wrist, which that completely freaks me out. Having broken bones and have a plate in my ankle, I just can't imagine in the wrist. I broke my wrist when I was younger. No pins, but I can't imagine how the pain and what he was going through. Like, it's just the whole the whole thing was very confusing to see how they were reacting and performing. And I was wondering, how is this race going to happen? Like,
Yeah.
again, being you, like, this doesn't represent how they're going to actually perform, right? Because it was just kind of all over the place. I think you and I were messaging, and you were like, that was a very topsy turvy. I was like, that's a good definition. Yep, yep.
It was very topsy-turvy. I think I had some concern, and now Friday seems so long ago, right? We are recording this right after the race has ended on Sunday, so we wanted to talk about things while they were fresh in our minds, but at the same time, Friday seems like a lifetime ago. But I do remember being a little concerned for quite a few of the teams because it just didn't look like anybody had any kind of pace. And practice to me is a lot like the testing was. You don't know what the team's goals are. You don't know what kind of runs they're practicing. If it's, they've got a lot of fuel or not a lot of fuel, or, short runs or long runs, or what they're working on. So it's not truly representative of what they're going to look like in the race or what their race pace will be. But even knowing that, I was still kind of concerned for a lot of teams. I thought, what in the world is happening right now? Like the world has gone topsy turvy. But I am with you with Lance Stroll. So on Friday, I was a huge advocate that he should not be racing. Just broke my hand running through the desert at the beginning of January. I have a pin right here. I still can't make a total fist. I don't know how to do that. Like this pinky just doesn't want to go down. And this is just my pinky. So when I was at therapy, physical therapy on Thursday, I asked my therapist, okay, I have a question for you. Formula One racer. They're going, they're pulling G's, they're going super fast. They've, this track, especially Bahrain, is very tough. It's very bumpy, and it's actually the most, I don't know what word I want to use there, but like bumpy, tough track as far as the surface, what that feels like.
Right.
So, you are holding on to a steering wheel like this. And I said, what do you think? Can he do it? Should he be doing it? She said, well, obviously I don't know what his injuries were, but I said, okay, fractured wrist. She said, you know what? He's an athlete and he wants to be out there, and, they can give him a cortisone shot or something to maybe, I'm assuming that just numbs that area, and it's not going to be comfortable. And he might end up with arthritis down the road if he's not allowing this to heal properly, but it doesn't mean he can't get out there and do it. But
You just saw him though, like that you could see the motion where they show the cams that how they turn and how much of that twisting, and the wrist has so many bones in it. Well, of course, we don't know his injury. We're not doctors, but
right.
I did hear though, because you and I were talking over the weekend, like in other sports, you have to have doctor clearances and all of that. But he did pass his test on Thursday for exiting. So they talked about that he passed the clearance to being able to
But
exit the car.
on the second try, the FIA gave him 2 attempts. So he did it on the first attempt, he could not get out. So the FIA said, okay, we're going to give you a second chance to do it. And he
Which is
was
interesting.
able to get out that time. So that did cause some controversy, I think, in the pits a little bit. Is he safe to drive? The other thing I noticed in practice is he was taking his thumb. So when they hold the steering wheel, like their thumbs are usually in here and they're turning, like you said, but he was taking his thumbs out of that and then turning the wheel. And then there were times he took his hands completely off the steering wheel. And then another time he put the hand that is hurt, he was kind of doing this and was just using his left hand. So all of
It's
those
kind of, it's
things
just
in
scary.
practice, it is scary. But in qualifying and today, every time he was using both hands.
Fun.
Both hands. So
And he drove really well. I mean, other than that little clip of Alonso there at the beginning.
yeah. Well, there was that, and then even on the formation lap, he went wide. Like, what's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on?
true, true.
That was a little weird, but
But
I
he
don't
he
know.
did finish what, sixth? So I mean,
He was
you get
right to drive
points.
the car, and I kind of don't blame him. One, being an athlete, you want to be out there, right? It's the first race of the season, but also you actually have a good car. Of course, you want to be out there driving that car. You want to finish in the points. You don't want, the F2 backup driver coming in and showing off that car. You want to be in that car.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't
It's a
blame
tough
him
race
at
to
all.
be in.
I
May
don't
not
blame
want to
him at all.
ride your bike, right before the season starts.
Well, these guys do all kinds of things. Charles was doing ice climbing. Valtteri, his girlfriend is an Olympic bicyclist, and they're biking all the time. They went up to the highest peak in Bahrain while they were there, and then riding down. I thought, what in the world? I mean, Lewis jumps out of planes. I don't like,
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
You
they're
never
out there doing it. I guess live your life to the fullest.
just don't be like me and slip down a single carpeted step and shatter your ankle. So,
Yeah, no.
yeah,
Definitely
it'd be
not.
hard to drive a car.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing though. I wonder. I haven't heard any interviews or anything of him or any quotes of him talking about any pain or how he's feeling about it. So
I
he's
don't think I
been.
have
I don't know if
either.
you've heard it. He's been pretty mums on that. He's
Yeah.
taking it. He's taking it like a champ, and just being very professional and just going out there and doing what he's got to do and not complaining. So I mean, that's pretty
Yeah.
stand up with that. I did see a quote though of a I want to say it was Fernando saying about him like that he was his effing hero, about
Oh,
him going out there and playing, going out there and driving after such an injury and just going out there and being, hard about it.
yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, I do say kudos, and I saw somebody say something. If this was any other driver, people would be, applauding him. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but hey, I get it. You have a great car. You want to get out there and drive it. You want to finish in the points. Suck it up and do it.
Yeah,
Suck it up.
he did it, and they both get points for Aston Martin. So that's just awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. But their qualifying wasn't as stellar as we thought it might be.
No, no, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. They didn't place it as high as we thought they could. So it's all this
No.
what if, right? You run those what ifs. What if they'd gone higher? What if they hadn't clipped each other like right there at the beginning of the race? Could that have changed things?
Yeah.
That's one of those things that I look at, not knowing a lot about it. Like is the difference of how far apart the pack was at the end. Is that normal, especially at this track and all races? That was really interesting. It's something maybe we can delve into even next week and analyze the differences, year over year. Because I was shocked to see how far apart 1, 2, and 3 were, even in the number of
Mhm.
seconds they were. It was pretty
Yeah.
far apart, especially between 2 and 3.
Yeah, Red Bull they definitely dominated. And I wouldn't even say in qualifying that Red Bull dominated that. Initially, they
No,
were they were getting through, right, to the next stage of qualifying, but it wasn't until, towards the end of Q3 that they pulled it out. I was kind of thinking, "Hey, wait a second, is Red Bull are they going to be all right here? Maybe what we saw in practice and testing wasn't on par, but they did bring it home for sure."
you're
So
right.
that was
You're right. Yeah, you're right. Because that's, yeah, because you go into the qualifying, you're right. Because it was that. And because Lance, I mean, it's, I don't know if that's when Lance's wrists were there and then they're qualifying, they did step it up toward the end. But that's where I think the rest of the qualifying was crazy. I mean,
yeah.
um, with Leclerc's car,
Ay ay ay. I
the
mean,
parts
pieces
falling apart.
flying on the first the
The
first few minutes.
commentators I thought were hysterical, saying that was the smallest piece of that they'd ever seen put a red flag during qualifying.
Yeah, I could not believe they actually brought out the red flag for that. It's a tiny piece. There were only, I think, a handful of cars out at that point. Get out there and grab it and get back. Like it's I know that's not safe, but like
No.
that was crazy. But honestly, I because I am a Ferrari fan, I like all the teams. I'm just gonna say that. But I Ferrari is my team, but to see pieces go flying off right then and thinking not knowing at first where the pieces were coming from. We didn't notice it was coming from his right tire thing, um, wheel cover. But I was like, great, here we go. Ferrari, Ferrari's out. How are they going to fix this before qualifying ends? Charles going to be out in the first round of qualifying, but good old piece of tape, and he was ready to go. So, yeah, my heart sank at that moment.
It blew my mind too. Is I'm thinking, well, carbon fiber, that's one of the strongest pieces of types of material out there. And how is this flying off? How is this breaking apart? Like what is the lack of structural integrity? Was it not formed right? Was it not cured right? Like what happened? It'd be interesting to find out the after effects, like when they do the analysis, what caused it to fail. I'm always interested in
Mhm.
the engineering aspect of that. You know, what
Yeah.
caused the failure? Like where did the error happen?
Absolutely. I don't know if Ferrari will ever let us know what happened there. I know the commentators were thinking, maybe it just wasn't bolted on all the way, which is a huge fail if that is
Yeah.
accurate. But hopefully that's not going to happen again for them. The other thing I thought was so interesting is it seemed like to me, and I don't know if it stood out to you, but especially at the end in Q3, it just didn't seem like the teams were really trying to get in those last few laps. I think
Yeah, is that
Ocon,
normal? Because it's my
no.
first one to watch. Is that normal? I thought that because I was still trying to understand the Q1, 2, and 3, and then like nobody was out doing much in that last one. I would think you'd want to try to get out there and try to beat your. Because you explained to me it didn't matter when you made it; it's your fastest lap count. So to me, I mean, I get you've got to save your tires, but you also the further up you can get, right, the better you get a chance at the race. So I know it's a balance of strategy, but I still just blew my mind that more people weren't out trying to get higher up.
Yep, that was my thing. Is usually you do have people out there running until the last second, and sometimes you have guys that are just trying before that, clock ticks down to zero. You're crossing that line, so you get that lap in, right, one last time. But, Leclerc stopped with 2 minutes left. And again, I thought, great, what's going on with the car? But they said later, no, it was a strategy move. They wanted to save a set of softs and they just didn't think that, or that it was going to be a little bit tough to get pole and beat the Red Bulls. So they just decided, let's go ahead and stop. I think Ocon only did one run in Q3. Again, maybe they just thought, we don't have the speed to be up there in fourth or fifth or, third or whatever. So they decided not to do it. Nico had his time. So he kind of was, I think, middle of that top 10. And then his track time got deleted
Yeah,
because of track limitations. So he just was like, oh, well, I'll just stay in 10th. I'm good. Like,
I've got to learn all those rules. Why? What rules they break that get them deleted or get penalties added? Because I see some of those, and it's like you get me messaging you. What was that all about? What rule did they break that had that happen?
yes. Yeah. So track limitations, um, that is when your tires, all four tires, go outside of a line that the FIA and the stewards they say this is where you can't have all four tires outside. Usually coming around a curve, it's usually I think at Bahrain there were two areas that they were really watching. And if your tires are going outside of that, in that sense, you get a track time deleted, right, in qualifying. During the race, though, Nico did get a penalty because he continued to go outside of those track lines. And they will warn you, they'll give you a black and white flag. And the team usually is on the radio and saying, like, hey, you've got a black and white flag. Like, let's kind of rein it in on, that area, that curve. But he did it again. So he had a 5-second penalty. Where I don't know where that ends, where he ends up with
Because that
that.
could end up being like unfair advantage, shaving some time off your clock or whatnot. Yeah, he ended up 15. Yeah,
Okay.
15.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean,
5 seconds
especially in
is a lot.
qualifying. What's that?
5 second penalties.
It is a lot. I mean, when you have these cars are as close as they are, especially this year, that can be a big difference. So, yeah, it is important, but especially important during qualifying because you don't have time to get around and get another lap in or go to the pits, get new tires and come, warm them up and get a lap in. It really could ruin where you end up or where you start. I shouldn't say end up, where you start. And
Well,
then we had
well,
all, go ahead.
I was going to say probably what you're about to say. What I thought was interesting, you explained to me the Q1, 2, and 3 in qualifying is that the all teams get try for times, and then it's only the top 15 and then the top 10 get the try for times, and then all three rookies were out after the Q1. So they only
Yep,
got to try that one time, and then they were stuck with their times, which meant
that's
they
right. Yep.
started pretty far back in the pack to begin with.
Yeah, they did. So you in Q1 you have 18 minutes and you just got to get out there and get your best time. You will notice that not all teams go out right away. Usually the teams that tend to be on the slower side are the first ones out there just getting, warmed up and trying to get that track where you don't have traffic in your way. So trying to get out there and get some times in. But yeah, sadly, all three rookies. So the first five that are out, three of them were rookies. I felt a little bad for Logan, right? Because Logan, down to the, I don't even know, hundredths of a second, had the exact same time as Lando. Exact
Yeah.
same time. And Lando went on to Q2, but because Lando set that time first, his time is the one that bumped him up. So even though he had the same qualifying time as Lando, he Logan was out in Q1. So I mean that to me is pretty darn impressive. You beat all the other rookies and you were on a technicality not moving on to Q2. So I was really excited for him. We talked about Logan last week and said maybe he's a little mouse and we hadn't heard much about him. And then within days, the Williams social media team has like a whole Top Gun volleyball beach, montage happening. And there's a few thirst trap pictures that are out there with Logan. And I just thought, you know what? I think overall, he just seems like he is going to be somewhat quietly confident in what he's doing. And sure enough, again, beat all the other rookies, narrowly, technically missed Q2. So I think he's going to be one to watch for sure.
And he finished 12th, which is
He
not too
finished
bad
12th.
for his first time out. Yeah, it's ahead of
Exactly.
all the other rookies.
Yep.
The highest rookie placement.
Absolutely. So I think that's exciting. And we'll talk about Williams in just a little bit. But I think, I was really excited to watch DeVries. He was the rookie I really wanted to watch. And yeah, he was just kind of there, I think. Just one of those teams. And to me, Logan Sargent is the one that really stood out this week. So,
Yeah, the
I mean,
quiet one.
again,
Interesting. Got to watch out for the
yeah.
quiet
And
one, right?
the quiet, you always got to watch the quiet ones. Because they will speak with their game and not just talk trash. So yeah, definitely. All right, let's talk about the race because oh my goodness, the race. Oh my Fernando.
Oh, my Fernando. It was crazy. Well, we know that Red Bull dominated, right? They
Oh,
dominated out you know, they were first and second, and they to start first and second on the podium. And then, of course, Maya Alonso rounded out the podium. But I think it was we play before we get to that, we should talk about everybody else.
let's talk
Do
about
it. So
everybody
let's
else.
start with McLaren.
Oh, poor McLaren. I mean, did anybody have a worse weekend? Maybe. I think there's you could make an argument for a few people, but
True.
McLaren, okay. So prior to practice, I mean, oh my gosh, I'm losing my words. Prior to yeah, practice, he was quoted someplace talking about how disappointed he was that they have some new parts, some new upgrades coming in Baku. And his comment was, if you want to have a strong season, why are you, and this is not an exact quote, but if you want to have a strong season, why do you not have these new upgrades, these new parts happening at the first race? I think he has been a little bit vocal in his preseason interviews, and this for sure stood out to me. Like there was a lot of talk from the McLaren side about their fancy rolling ads on their cars and how they can, have one logo, advertiser logo, and then they'll switch it out for another one. And it's like, dude, maybe you guys should have put that money into your car or that technology or whatever into
Yeah.
your car because I agree with Lando. Why are your new upgrades and your new parts coming in Baku? What?
It
Why
doesn't
not?
make any sense. Well, the commentators we've been talking to, I'm pretty sure it's about McLaren. They're at the wrap up of the race about how the cost cap and all of this, and that how it impacted McLaren. I was like, how they were such a powerhouse, and now
Yeah,
it just felt like I just don't get that so much. If they were such a powerhouse, that things were going great, they had a strong car. How did the cost cap impact them? It
yeah.
shouldn't.
I
Like
think
I don't
I
get
think
it.
the hope was that the cost cap would bring teams like McLaren up, but they were fighting for, best of the rest basically last year in the constructors, and this year, I mean, where did they even finish? I mean, Piastri, I think it was an issue with his steering wheel, but he was out at lap 15. So that poor guy is not even getting any kind of,
And the whole big
time.
play, the whole
Yeah,
big play
time
for him
behind the
last
wheel.
year, and the sneakiness to get him over and everything, and well, that's not playing out very well.
Not that well, but I'm sure Danny Rick is probably like like I would be. He's making $18 million to not drive for McLaren this year. And especially with McLaren like looking like they do, I'm sure he's pretty happy with the way maybe that worked out. But
And
yeah,
then
Piastri
Lando finished last with lapped twice.
lapped twice, and there were three DNFs. So we had Piastri, Charles, and Ocon finally just bowed out. And we'll talk about Ocon in a minute. But so Lando finished last. Piastri did not finish. Lando stopped twice in the pits for by lap 18.
Yeah,
Lap 18, you've already stopped twice. The strategy was going into this race is that teams are going to have two pit stops total out of 57 laps. Twice Lando
the
was in,
18.
two times. So, I mean, yeah, it is not looking
Oh,
good.
they're falling
And
apart.
uh, I, I was hoping, especially after qualifying, Lando did not do bad at all. Like I thought, okay, maybe McLaren will be up there. Maybe it just was not a track for their car. I don't know, but it just not looking good at all for
No.
them. And I can't imagine what is going to be happening, what they're going to be talking about there. Sorry, I keep moving my leg. It's going to show up on the video. So poor McLaren. We're gonna see what they can change in the next 2 weeks before Saudi Arabia and round two, and maybe they can pull something together. But just what a frustrating weekend for them.
Time will tell. Well, next
Time
we have
will
up is Williams. Williams, I was happy to see that they that Albon placed 10th. They got points. I'm very happy for that. I mean, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Williams.
Me
I don't know if it's
too.
has to do with when I first got into this and you had me watch to learn all about F1, and that used to be owned by a fellow Claire.
Yes.
Um, but I just was really happy to see they placed. Albon got to 10th, and so that's cool. They've got some points this year, already starting the year off with points, so that's awesome.
Yep.
So that was really a good thing, right? And then Logan,
Absolutely.
we already talked about that, to start out as a rookie and place 12th. That was pretty
It's
good.
it's amazing. And I had to tease you earlier, but I'm going to tease you on the podcast too. But you are wearing the Williams colors, which,
It's
like
really
you, I have
not
a
a
soft spot for
mansion, but
Williams.
okay.
I have a soft spot for Williams as well. I just think the history with that team, I've always liked, their drivers. I love Albon. When he was with Red Bull, I just thought this guy, I really like his driving. I think that, he could be somebody, maybe not necessarily a world champion, but he's a solid driver. Um, I do love their merch this year, just saying. I know I'm a Ferrari fan, but I think I might have to get some of that Williams merch. That color combo, I am just loving it. So don't be surprised if you do see me in some Williams gear this year. But like you said, Albon, getting that last point, he finished in the points. Yuki was, trying to give him a little run for that money, but he's stuck in there and he got that extra point. And then, I mean, again, Logan, 12th. That is a great, I mean, what a great first race for a rookie. You finished 12th. You're just outside the points. You just barely made it. You didn't make it into Q2. So I'm excited to see what else they can do because hopefully they'll just get better and better.
Me too. And I'm hoping that this is like it was saying during uh, I think it was during this past weekend during qualifying and practice that this was hopefully a quicker showing of the cost cap, showing the leveling of the playing field, right? Because people were predicting it was going to take several years for that to really start to show, and maybe we're really starting to seeing it in 2023 that we're going to see a closing the gap of the different teams and it not be so far apart, and that would be nice to see.
I think it'd be really exciting. And I like to see them up there. And again, if they can finish higher in the constructors, they're going to get some more moolah. And then next year they'll be even better. So we'll see. We'll see what
Absolutely. And
happens. Okay. What about Mercedes?
Mercedes, I for Lewis to have dominated for so many years, I always expect more from him. I saw him eking it out. I thought he was going to get fourth, and I
Mm.
was like screaming at my screen, and I was shocked that he didn't. So I'm sure he's a little bummed. But he had a really good showing.
I think
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the car or what. But Russell was pretty close behind. I mean, they both got points. What is it, fifth and seventh? So that's good
yeah.
for Mercedes.
Yeah,
For the
I think
construction
they
stuff. So
ran a lot. They ran a lot towards the front. I the same as you. I just thought Carlos was not. I thought he was going to keep dropping back, and I thought for sure at the end there that Lewis was going to pass him. Once Signs got passed by Fernando, I thought for sure, you know, well, Lewis is going to
I
get him.
even said something that made me think that he wasn't sure if the car was going to keep it up. He even said he pushed, he didn't know if he was going to be able to keep it going. So I was wondering if he was worried about the car or the tires or something. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and
yeah,
I think this week Toto did say, this is not the car that they need to be fighting for the front. I think that, he's been vocal about it. I think that Lewis, has said, we're not quite where we want to be. George has said the same thing about the car. They need a new design. Um, but having said all of that, again, they ran towards the front. There was the great battles, a couple great battles with George. So first with
mhm.
Fernando, and then a little one with Lance. Kind of early to mid of the race between George and the Aston Martins, and you know he got past both George got past both times, but the one with Lance was mainly because George was just coming out of the pits. His tires weren't warmed up and Lance had already been around once. So um that really doesn't count. But I I think my favorite part of the race was Hamilton and Alonso fighting with each other for a little bit there. I mean, classic. They're former teammates. They have had a rivalry. They've both been around for a very long time. And to see them, and especially Fernando in a car, like last year, he held Lewis off. He was able to defend Lewis and hold him off for a little bit. But this year, with Fernando being in a car that has some push that can rival and obviously beat the Mercedes, it was so fun to watch those two. And I think that was my favorite part of the whole race was that little battle between them. But, Mercedes holding their own. And if they make some changes throughout the year, great. Um, they'll stay up there, but they're not going to be one of the top two teams.
It's gonna be good battles to watch throughout the season too. You know.
Absolutely.
Well, then we have Alpine. They,
Here's where you can have the argument for who had the worst day ever. Esteban Ocon. Esty Bestie. Oh my goodness. What in the world? Uh,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
penalties galore. Let's name them off because I wrote them all down. Are you ready?
I'm
he
glad you
first
did. I couldn't keep up.
he had a 5-second penalty for apparently not lining up properly on the grid. So that means he might have been a little to the right of his box. He might have been a little like his front wing might have been a little in front of the little white box. I watch my races on F1 TV, and they went back and they weren't really seeing, I think, what maybe the stewards were seeing. So not too sure there. So gave him a 5 second penalty. Then he comes into the pits, and apparently the pit crew didn't get the memo or something, but they gave him a 10 second penalty for not serving his first penalty properly. So there's that. Then they call him in again, his team, and he gets speeding in the pits. So add another 5 second penalty for that for a total of 20 seconds in penalties.
Five
And I think it
seconds.
was at that point he just said, forget it. And let's just
Yeah, at
finish
that
it.
point, like, what's why? Why?
Why?
I mean, granted. I mean, I don't know if he would have known this, but granted, the difference between, first and third was what, 45, almost 50 seconds. I mean,
Yeah.
there was still a pretty big gap, but 20 seconds, that's a lot. There's some of the other gaps in the rest of the pack were not that far. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
That
Yeah.
that was a lot. But I just think all weekend for Alpine, they, Gasly finished starting 20th on the grid
Yeah.
because he had a lap time deleted. But I think he was still in the bottom. I think he was in the bottom five anyways yesterday during qualifying. But then he got
But he
bumped
pulled it
down.
out. He ended up pulling it out. He ended up placing and getting points, right? He finished
Yeah,
what, ninth?
he finished
Yeah.
ninth, and I'm really sure he had the fastest lap. So that gives you an extra point for the
Yeah.
driver. So yeah, I mean he did end up making it work, but there's that plus. But I think overall, Alpine did not have the weekend they were hoping to have. And for sure, Esteban Ocon did not have the outing he was hoping to have, especially after qualifying in the top
And
10.
then there's Haas. And oh,
Another
Haas.
team I want to root for.
I
Do root
know.
for
Mainly
them.
because you love their principles so much.
I love Gunter. Oh my
Gunter,
gosh. Gunter is
I adore Gunter too. I've got to get my now that I'm in Berlin, beef my German up, and I can understand him more. But
yes.
yeah,
I
Haas.
love me some Gunter.
Yeah, Kevin and my
Nico.
brain and Nico and Nico. I mean, of course, I want to root for Nico too, being that he's German. But I like just they just did not have good days.
No. Yeah, especially Kevin, right? So yesterday in qualifying, not good. Not good at
No,
all. He was out. It just wasn't hitting. I think something did happen. I think it was the red flag and he just did not get, a good run in after that. So that's what they're saying anyways. And then today, I mean, he kind of was there was a couple times I thought, "Oh, good for you. You're making progress." And then he would just end up back down. But Nico, I think there was just some hope, right? After him finishing 10th in qualifying. Where did he end up?
15th,
15th.
and Kevin was 13th. So I mean, they both were. I mean,
Yeah. And Nico has a penalty also because he got
oh yeah,
tagged with a 5 second penalty, I think towards the end of the race for track exceeding track limits. So that also not helping that situation. But I know that Haas, like the biggest concern with that has been they can get those one lap times, right? Like they can get a good time on one lap, but having that pace throughout an entire race, their car may not be able to do it.
it's
It
that
may just
consistency.
be kind of in spurts. Yeah,
It's that
that's
consistency. Well, another one that wasn't super consistent, I don't think, was AlphaTauri.
yeah, AlphaTauri. Ay ay ay.
I had high hopes for. I mean, we'll see how it plays out for the season, but I kind of had some high hopes. I don't know if high hopes, maybe high expectations for Nick DeVries, mainly with just the kind of the way he set himself up. And I know part of it's a docudrama, the the thing on Netflix, but he kind of came out with this presence and attitude of I have something to prove. This is who I am. I've got and whatnot. Not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing it so far. I mean, he was pretty impressive in the one drive he did last year, but like so far, I'm just not really seeing much out of him.
I agree. And he was the one rookie that I was most excited to watch this year. Probably, even though, AlphaTauri, like, they don't have the best car, but I was just so excited because Nick drove Williams last year when he filled in for Alex Albon. Also, not, a car that's at the top of the grid. And he was able to make some things happen. So I was definitely really disappointed for him today. Yuki, on the other hand, um, I think he knows his job is on the line, and
Hmm.
he was doing some work today. He was fighting for that last spot. He didn't quite get it, but he's beating his teammate, which some people thought may not happen. And again, we're race 1 out of 23, right? We've got a long season ahead of us, but straight out of the gate, I think people were expecting DeVries to do better than Yuki. And Yuki showed today that, he's got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Well, there are only a couple left. There's not much to say about Alfa Romeo because there's just,
No, they were just there, right? Like
yeah.
I saw Botas, he's doing well. I think I noticed Joe's name towards the beginning, but
And
okay.
Botas, he finished eighth, but there just wasn't much to say.
There's
Yeah,
not. They're
and
just quiet.
yeah, very quiet. And then, well, Ferrari.
Oh, Ferrari.
I,
Oh,
I mean, they're
Ferrari.
not my team. I know they're your team, and they're a powerhouse. I mean, they're just it's a legendary, right? But
Right.
I just I screamed, and luckily we're not. It was Sunday's a quiet day technically here in Germany, and I screamed when his car just died. I'm like, it just died. It just
It
cut
just
off.
stopped.
But luckily,
Yep.
I mean, luckily he got it off. I loved how they're like he did good track etiquette. He moved it over to a safe spot. We only had a yellow flag. I mean, that was great. But it just they did the replay. And you hear it just just
That was it. It
what do you
literally
do?
was
I feel
just
so
that.
bad for the drivers when that happens because they have the skill. It's all of it's riding on them and the car. And
Right.
when the car goes and it has nothing to do with them, uh,
It's awful. It's awful. And to have that happen, I mean, what I was sending you when that was happening. I was screaming like,
me too,
no. And then also F word, for
me
sure. But
too.
but seriously, I mean, after last year and the reliability issues that Ferrari had, and here's Charles again in third. Okay, we were what, 10 laps maybe
I think yeah, it was so
from the
close.
end, and all of a sudden the it just goes dead. Like, are you kidding me? How in the world is Ferrari letting this happen again? And then I was worried for Carlos
Yeah, me
because
too. Especially when he said, "If I push, I don't know if I'm going to make it." I was like, "Oh, great! Is his car going to drop out?" I mean, granted,
right.
I've got Fernando, and I was like, "Well, then, yeah." Mm. But
Yay.
but at the same time, I was worried because he again. I don't want a driver I like to win just because a car fails another driver. I
Right.
want them to win because they just beat the other driver out handily and the other car handily, not because the car failed.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. That's how everybody should win. So, yeah, I think for Carlos, his car did not seem to have the pace that Charles did because Carlos was consistently back at one point. I don't think I wrote down, he was a good 30 seconds back, maybe halfway through the race. And sometimes that does happen where, he'll be third or fourth, but he's way back, way back. So, I don't know exactly what was happening there. I know he said yesterday after qualifying that he was having a tough time with the car on this track. So not sure if that was, rolling over, if he was also having some engine issues we don't know about. But to see Charles go out and to have that happen on the first race is just, it's heartbreaking. The only thing I can say is that there was a lot of chatter about the Bahrain curse, right? So if you win, whoever wins, they tend to go on and have a really crappy season. So I'm hoping that
well,
Ferrari,
here's hoping. that has some impact to somebody in Red Bull, which brings us to Red Bull. I don't need to.
Yeah,
We don't need to say much on them, but okay, they
no.
dominated. They got first and second.
They
Okay,
they completely dominated, and I think that
we expected
like
it.
last year, we're going to hear that Dutch and Austrian national anthems repeatedly. I think that's where we're going to be this year. And I mean, good for them, right? Like they knew they wanted to get back to being the top team, and they put in the money and they put in the work, and the last 2 years they've made that car just what it is. And it could very well be a season where they maybe just dominate the whole thing. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Well,
I
that
don't
brings
think
us
we
up. That brings us up, and we're getting close to our time. So that brings us up to Aston Martin and the hype train. And I think the hype train was good
oh,
for Oh My Fernando.
oh, my Fernando. The hype train lived up to its hype. Didn't think it would after qualifying, but oh my goodness. And like you pointed out, I was a little nervous in that first lap when Stroll had contact with Alonso. And did you notice Alonso said on his radio, I was hit? I don't think he realized that it was Lance who hit him. I don't,
Yeah,
I don't think he knew, but it cost Alonso a spot. So he lost a spot to Mercedes. I think it was to Hamilton.
yeah.
So I was thinking, oh boy, here we go. The train is going off the tracks, and that's going to be the end of that.
And he still pulled it out. Though you still wonder, like, what if Leclerc's car did not fail? Could he have pulled it off? Like, if that had happened, would he have gone even higher? Could he have overtaken second? Like, there's a lot of what ifs, right? You
Yeah.
still wonder. I wonder, So it'll be interesting to see future races what happens because obviously Alonso still has it, even in his 40s. I wish they could have just it could maybe we can stop talking F1 TV about his age and the fact that was it Piastri wasn't even born at the time. Like, okay, we get it. We don't need to hear that. He's a great driver. Sometimes age and wisdom is very helpful because he's
Yep.
very seasoned and he knows what he's doing. Um,
Yep.
I thought it was great that they caught him like running up and hugging the Red Bull drivers there at the end and giving him his congratulations and whatnot. So
Yep.
that was
And
really
talking
cool.
And talking about age and wisdom, there was a point during the race where he was on the radio to his engineers and saying, hey, Hamilton is struggling in front of me. He's got a lot of tire degradation. Let me know what this looks like. Let me know, should I be pushing? Let's keep an eye on that. And I thought, here he is in the car, strategizing and
Yep.
letting his team know what he is seeing on track, which drivers should do. But he's strategizing, tell me when I can go. Like Hamilton is struggling here. So I think it's going to be so fun to watch him. So
I'm
fun to
looking
watch him
forward to
this
it.
year.
Well, that brings us up with the next races in 2 weeks in Saudi
2 weeks.
Arabia, right?
Yep.
Right. So
Saudi
take the
Arabia.
are still on next week. So we are weekly.
Yes, we will be back. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about, what happened after. So all the analysis that the teams are doing, what is coming out of those teams as to why they performed the way they did, what changes might they need to be making. And I think we'll probably talk about, maybe for some of the newbies to F1, we can talk about some of how things work. We can talk a little bit more about qualifying. We can talk about the tires because we've got 5 new tires this season from Pirelli. So I think there's a lot of things, even in the off weeks, that we can definitely talk about. So stick with
Yeah,
us.
and anybody listening could give us suggestions, right? They could ask us questions and whatnot. I know I have a ton, but they don't have to be my questions. So because that's what we're all about, right? Have we can learn
Absolutely.
strategy, and we want to be help everybody learn and enjoy and get the strategy out of it and education, and because we're different, right? It's all about
We are different. We are
loving the
different.
grid.
Yes. Now, because I'm a fashion gal, we are still going to on Mondays have like my little roundup of my favorite fits for the week. And
Oh,
so, so while we will be talking about strategy and
oh,
teaching and all of the
well,
fun, we're also
it's
going to
not
talk
like I
about some
didn't
fashion.
already point out, the principle of Aston Martin's. look to you earlier in the week too. So that there's still that we still are human. So
Yes, you made me look twice at the Aston Martin principal, so don't think I ever noticed him before, but I do now.
all right, well, I think that rounds us up. I'm so excited. Number
Yay!
2 is down. Good to
Yeah,
see you and
one
talk to
down.
you.
We are
So we will.
ready to go. And now I think we know who to look for.
All right, off to the races.
Yay! Bye.
See ya. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind the scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.